And we start right away with exclusive material. While Russia is trying to advance in the Donetsk region, what else will we definitely talk about today? Ukraine is implementing its key strategy far beyond the front line, specifically in the Donetsk region. Deliver powerful strikes on military targets within the territory of the Russian Federation. From the latest drone strikes on Moscow, strikes on the Bryansk chemical plant, a strategic facility in the Tula region, and the Saratov region. Unique details about new, bright, and very effective strikes on the territory of the Russian Federation. Watch right now in the report by TSN Week journalist Oksana Rodionova.
Oh my, 7th, 8th, 9th, wow, it's really blazing already, 10, 12, 13, 14.
This was one of the largest long-range and most effective attacks on the facilities of the Russian military-industrial complex. To the enemy's rear,
It's flying a hell of a lot, really a hell of a lot. A lot is heading towards the city.
the geography of the strikes is extremely wide. Right away, 12 regions of enemy Russia shook from our long-range drones. And not just that, this will hit the factories. We need to go to the factory. The Bryansk chemical plant, located 120 kilometers from the front line, became the first successful target of the operation. According to TSN's own sources on Sunday at the Security Service of Ukraine, there were direct hits from the missiles and a lot of detonations afterwards.
These gear are the rockets hitting, look.
I'm going...
Well, you can't escape your fate.
At this facility, the enemy produces gunpowder, explosives, components for rocket fuel, and various munitions. In particular, shells for the MLRS, Grad, Tornado S, Smerch, and high-explosive aerial bombs. There, in the Bryansk region, our defenders once again reached the second electronics production enterprise in Russia, Silicon L. They also reached several strategically important enemy targets in Tula, including the Olekino chemical plant, which produces munitions, gunpowder, and materials for the Russian military-industrial complex, as well as the Tula Chermet enterprise. This is one of the largest producers of pig iron. Drones attacked Kazan. There was a chemical plant there. Urksyntes is the only Russian manufacturer of high-strength plastic and one of the largest producers of high and low-density polyethylene. We also reached the place where it was believed that the oil refining was protected, the KNPZ in Tatarstan, which is the main supplier of fuel beyond the Ural Mountains. There were explosions in the Saratov region. They hit the Saratov oil refiners. They were taken from the warehouse with FABs, KBs, and cruise missiles at the Engels airfield and the Crystal oil depot. They ignited the tanks with liquid aviation fuel for the Tu-160 bombers. This is high-density fuel. It has a characteristic rich yellow color of the exhaust. Due to its complexity, it is produced at only 2 factories in Irkutsk and Orenburg. This is a state reserve storage. The Russians were extinguishing it for 5 days, and then it was hit again right away. It seems our forces were trying to create logistical problems for the Russian aviation. It worked. Even if not everything burned down, the strike is daily. Russia was launching 60 to 70 bombs at Ukraine, and then it dropped to 3 times less.
What's the nuance? This fuel is very specific. As specialists say, you can't just go to, I don't know, the neighboring oil depot, Nikolai Achad in Georgia. No. It has certain viscosity properties because it's at high altitudes. And what we saw was a missile attack on Ukraine. I am more than convinced that this attack should have been a little earlier, and B, a bit more extensive than what we saw. Planes are ready with missiles, but without fuel, no one is going anywhere. I'm sure it worked after hitting the Angel.
It was thought out down to the smallest detail. The attack had perfect coordination between the defense units, and there were quite a few involved. From intelligence to missile forces.
There has been a certain cataloging of objects by sectors of the economy based on the importance of enterprises for the Russian Federation. It allows for more careful planning and execution of attacks on the economy of the Russian Federation.
Not only do we identify where to strike, but also when. The Russians counted more than 200 drones, but it seems there were a lot more. They were hitting with various long-range drones and missiles.
The number of drones being produced and launched from our side has significantly increased. Here are these light missiles. Neptune, Ruta, Polonitsia. There are questions about their guidance systems. We will compensate for the biggest problems with accuracy by using quantity because they will be cheap. But when we're talking about Neptune, there are technological developments that allow, roughly speaking, to hit the target with a slight deviation. And in fact, to approach the performance levels demonstrated by these Western missiles.
Developing an effective military for striking significant positions and using unconventional approaches helps systematically break down Russia's military potential. We're not taking a break. A drone. It's a drone. Wow, I actually jumped. It's like a moped. On Thursday night, Ukrainian drones hit the Lysky oil depot in the Voronezh region, which supplies fuel for the Russian army.
3 drones here.
And this Friday, the oil depot in the Kaluga region was hit like this.
From January to December 2024, after the Ukrainian strikes on Russian oil refineries, the systematic nature of the strikes and their consistency, we saw that 13% of Russian refinery capacities were idle. 13% is what has been recorded in the Russian economy. There are many enterprises that Ukraine hits again and again, sometimes even for the 4th time. So for you, the summary is that the systematic approach, the systematic nature, is really growing. Ukraine is not giving these enterprises a chance to recover on time. The situation doesn't give us a break, it's tough, but we're managing.
There won't be a corresponding result, for now, because the tactic of small cuts that our defenders have chosen has a cumulative effect. And the domino principle hasn't been cancelled. One day we will indeed push that critical stone.
Well, now it's time to analyze the situation. In the long-suffering Pokrovsk direction of the front, the enemy continues its military terror. The aggressors launched 45 attacks in the areas of Vodyen, Drua, Mirolyubivka, Mirnohrad, Promen, Lisovka, Novohrud, Uspenivka, Andriivka, Shevchenka, Dakhne, Ulakli, and Yantarny. Ukrainian defenders repelled 35 attacks. As a result of town airstrikes, there were casualties in Ulakli and Alexiivka. Yes, Russia has lost the initiative in the north. This is Kharkiv region, Sumy region, and also Kursk. President Zelensky stated this a week ago. The initiative remains with the Russians in the east. According to Zelensky, this is happening due to the slow staffing of Ukrainian brigades by Western partners. Where does the enemy most often attack? Why, exactly, Ukrainian troops are lacking. And journalist Oleksandr Zahorodny from the Sunday News will talk about the terrible losses, including the death of cameraman and volunteer Ruslan Hanushchak.
This is Russian armored vehicles burning in the east of Ukraine. And here they are advancing. Russian stormtroopers. They move like zombies when one of them is killed. Look, the other one doesn't even pay attention to it. He goes on to die himself exactly. 50 seconds later. They... standing like zombies, waiting until a Ukrainian drone hits them squarely in the head. Some even bow to the Ukrainian drone. They are ready to kill themselves right away. As soon as a Ukrainian drone appears in the sky, even more so, they travel 1,000 kilometers just to come to a Ukrainian cemetery and die here. But only a few decide not to follow orders and not to storm the Ukrainian positions. And here's why. This Russian is hiding in the basement of the gray area between the two fronts, because he understands that death is lurking for him from both sides.
I am a serviceman, 429th Motorized Rifle Regiment. Please. We are being sent to storm practically without ammunition. Only 4 magazines per person.
And Russian soldiers are threatened with torture if they get captured.
We had a company commander who gave the order that we don't take prisoners and we don't surrender ourselves. So if you surrender, you'll either be tortured or end up on a yacht.
The number of destroyed Russian soldiers is shocking. This is how a Russian prisoner describes his first and last battle.
They said to go through the forest strip. If everything is clear, move on to the next forest strip. Many dead. Around every bunker there are dead. 8 people. There are only 2 of us left alive. We huddled in the bunker. Our comrade was shot at the entrance. And Alexander, a serviceman of the armed forces of Ukraine, had his machine gun jammed. He couldn't move the bolt, but we immediately raised our hands and surrendered.
But the Russians are still advancing. It's been 15 months in a row. Their tactics on the front are simple but effective. Russian stormtroopers advance in small groups into the gray zone. If they encounter serious resistance from our troops, they drop planning bombs from airplanes that destroy everything living and then seep forward again. The task of the enemy's maximum is not even Pokrovsk or Chasov.
To bypass Pokrovsk from the left, basically they are trying to do this. It seems to me that the fighters have a tactic for suppression. They need to bypass and suppress. Here they are trying to bypass Pokrovsk. If you connect a straight line from Pokrovsk to Chasiv Yar, look at what kind of cauldron could be there. An approximate depth very roughly is 1200 square kilometers.
From Pokrovsk to Chasiv Yar, it's 65 kilometers. Now it all depends. Only our defense will withstand it. This pressure will only be withstood by these KM. The suburb of Chasiv Yar, here, the defense is held by the fighters of the 24th Separate Mechanized Brigade. The commander with the pseudonym Yuri states that the enemy is attacking in small groups, sometimes even in pairs, but practically without stopping, both day and night. That's why people are exhausted. The enemy is accumulating their reserves right here. And his unit really lacks well-trained recruits. A fighter with the pseudonym Kuzya is specifically responsible for the additional training of newly arrived fighters in the brigade. He says that if there's time, they work with each one for up to 2. We have our own training ground.
There we train them for more combat conditions. It's important to properly manage trench armament. Weeks. The shells were attracted there because the terrain is flat. It's with turns. They throw grenades just like that. They usually only throw dummy or training grenades, and a live grenade is psychological. So a person takes the grenade and their hands start shaking.
Right now, Putin is trying to push as deep as possible into Ukrainian territory. They managed to hold back the toothless onslaught, but at the cost of losses. This week, a journalist documentarian, our colleague, warrior, and also a TCH cameraman, Ruslan Hanushchak, was killed at the front. He was filming a movie about the revolution of dignity, about the Ilovai's cauldron. He fought in the glorious 92nd Brigade in the strike drone unit Kot 9-2. But at the beginning of the larger war, he worked together with journalist Andriy Tsaplienko. He was the one who saved Andriy's life during the enemy rocket attack.
This is just such a surname operator.
This is such an operator. Just such an operator. Well, a journalist dreams of such operators, but he was a friend, very close. And he saved my life when we came under fire near Chernihiv. And he was the first to hear the rocket flying, and he shouted, "Get down!" I will always be grateful to him for that for the rest of my days.
Ruslan is being buried to the mournful singing. Trimbit, he was from Frankivsk region and loved the mountains very much. I just want to give you the business seekers. I just want to read to you what else buy are duplicates.
I just want to read what I pee. I just want to read to you what he wrote just before his death. This is our correspondence. I decided to enlist because I felt that I could do something more for my people, for my country. Here at the front I am free. Free from the fear of death. You're not bothered by the little things. It's an unmatched feeling of freedom. A tribute to the hero. Heroes never die. How many?
Have farewells only taken place here at Independence Square. War truly takes the best and the dearest. Ukraine is paying an incredibly high price in this war. The only thing that can calm us down, that all of this is not in vain.